Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, fellow Toastmasters. Thank you very much for that kind introduction and for your applause. How many of you here, think about it now, how many of you here gave a speech and really, really connected with the audience? Allison? How? How did you connect?
Just how did I connect? Knew the one thing that I wanted to achieve. Knew
Okay.
the one thing that I wanted them to remember.
Well said. How many of you gave a speech and you really wished that you had connected, but you didn't? Yeah, the hands went. So what I want to do today, I want to connect with you. Because a speech without connection is not a speech. I want to connect, and I want you to connect with me. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, it's not difficult. And this workshop really is about you, the audience. And what we're going to do today is, remember, we have to define our terms. So we're going to say, okay, we always talk about the audience, so what the heck is an audience? We're going to define that term. We're going to do an audience analysis, and I'll come to that in a moment because that's very important. Your ace in the hole. And I'll tell you about that because Allison mentioned that word earlier on. I'm going to come to the ace in the hole. And my most memorable speeches, still connecting after all these years. Now this is very interactive, folks, so please, anytime you want to ask a question or make a comment, go right ahead. Okay, let's define our term. We've heard an awful lot about the term audience. What exactly is it? It's very simple. It's a collectivity of individuals in a communicative setting sharing common interests. You are an audience of Toastmasters. Those around you, those sitting beside you, share a common interest. You believe in the Toastmasters mission. You want to improve. You want to grow. You want to improve your communication skills. That's the key. So we're here. We're a collectivity of individuals. We know exactly where we're sitting, where we want to be, and we're sharing common interests. That's key. So keep that in mind as we move along. Okay, if I were to ask you, what's the single most important element in any communication process? If I were to ask you a very simple question. Topics. Thank you. Any other answers?
Listening.
Listening, okay. What else? Understanding.
Goal.
Sorry?
A goal.
A goal. What else?
Clear communication.
Clear communications. What else?
Background of audience?
I'm sorry, say it loud.
Audience background.
Audience, there you go. That's true. All your answers are good, don't get me wrong. But the single most important element is the audience. It's not the topic. It's not where you're going to speak. It's not why you're going to speak. It's not how long you're going to speak. Yes, those are important and they will fall into place. But the most important thing is the audience. Who is my audience? Who specifically is my audience? Who am I speaking to? My friends, once you nail this, everything else is secondary. Now, why do I say that? If I said, okay, Vince, I want you to come with me and you're going to tell people about your job. And I left it at that, right? Now Vince walks in a room, and lo and behold, his audience is a group of kids in grade 6. Did I tell him that? No, I just said, tell them about your job. If he walks into the room and he sees engineers, third-year university engineers, is he going to speak to them the same way as he would to those kids in grade 7? No. But did I tell him that? No. I said, Vince, tell me about your job. His first obligation is, okay, Harry, who's my audience? Who wants to know about my job? Because I'm not going to speak the same way to a group of kids as I am to a group of third-year engineering students. Who's my audience? And then you start the who, what, where, when, and why. Who's my audience? Why am I speaking? What are they there for? What do they hope to get from my speech? Right? What message do I want to leave? How many of them are there? Is there question and answer? Do I have an overhead? Right? So all of this is what I call, my friends, an audience analysis. So what you have to do before you speak is you have to identify a set of attitudes belonging to the audience. What do they have in common? What's common in this room? Well, number one, you're all Toastmasters. I know that. Number two, you give up your lunch hour to sit in a Toastmasters meeting. Number three, you have manuals. You're progressing at your own pace. You give speeches. You travel outside your club. So I know that there are common attitudes, and I want to structure my presentation to address those attitudes, which simply means connecting with the audience. So my friends, it is my sincere hope that all of you accept challenges to speak to an audience. Don't ever say no. If somebody wants you to give a speech outside this club, say yes. Promise yourself. Say yes. If you need help, call me. I'll help you. My friends, don't ever turn down the speaking engagement. I'll tell you why in a minute. But before you do that, you got to do your homework. You just don't walk into a room and speak. No. Who's my audience? Who am I speaking to? And we get there by an audience analysis worksheet right here. Okay? And these are questions you have to ask yourselves. Number one, what does the audience need to know? So when I gave this presentation last fall at the District 60 conference, I said, okay, what does my audience want to know about connecting with the audience? What's important? In other words, I have to be specific. You have to be specific too. Don't go all over the place. Zero in on what you want to say, right? What does the audience want to know? There are needs. They need to know certain things about connecting with the audience. And I'm sure they're going to want to know certain aspects about my speaking career, what I've done, and what you can do to enhance your communication skills, whether you're in a Toastmasters club or whether you're outside a club. What does the audience need to know? What does the audience want to know? Right? What are the possible benefits for this audience? In other words, the WIFM, right? What's in it for me? What do I want you to get out of it? And of course, what questions would you have? So this is what I call an audience analysis. Now it's funny, I got off the elevator, and who do I meet? My good friend Dirk. Now here's my audience analysis in motion. Why? I know Dirk. He knows me. He's from the Port Credit Club, and my experience with Port Credit goes back 15 years. So right away, I'm connecting and he's connecting with me. Do you see why it's important? He's not a stranger. I'm not a stranger to him. So the audience analysis starts as soon as I saw him. That's the connection. The connection is made. Right? I look around the room, I know Vince. I've seen him at Toastmaster gatherings. That's key. Right? So when you're putting together the scenario about speaking, my friends, don't just say, okay, here's my topic, I'm going to speak. No, it doesn't work that way. You owe it to yourself to do some homework. And the more homework you do, the better it is. So find out from your host, where am I speaking? Who's the audience? If they say, well, there's a group of young people willing to know, wanting to know something about Toastmasters, or it's an advanced club, and they would like to hear you speak, or give your speech that you gave at a competition. Again, common denominator, my friends. Who is my audience? Keep that in the back of your mind because it's very, very important. Look at it this way. To the teacher, who's the most important? The students. To the minister or the priest, who's the most important people? The congregation. Ask yourselves a simple question. In my job at NSC Lavalin, who is my audience? Who's your audience when you walk out of this room? Don't tell me, just keep it in the back of your mind. Who's your audience? Do you know? You should. If you're not, you better find out.
It's my boss, I think.
There you go. No, your boss, that's fine. But you've got to pinpoint. You've got to pinpoint the audience, and that's very important. Okay, so when we talk about speaking, my friends, two things come to mind. A speech is either speech-centered or audience-centered. Let's look at those 2 points. If it's speech-centered, all you do is outline the speaker's perception, listing her points. In other words, I'm standing here, and I'm going to list 5 or 10 points. It's a speech-centered presentation. Fair enough. Audience-centered. What does that mean? Reflects the needs, concerns, and beliefs of the audience. How much do you know about Toastmasters? So as a speaker, I'm going to pick up the phone. I've spoken to Vince. We've emailed each other. So I have an idea about you and your club. So I want to make my presentation audience-centered, right? The most powerful message, my friends, integrates both. Your speech, your presentation is speech-centered coupled with audience-centered. So now you're touching on the facts, but I'm going to hit a nerve. And as Allison said, and by God, she's quite right, I want to touch your heart. And I'm going to come to, that's my ace in the hole, I'm coming back to that. Very important. Keep that in the back of your mind. Speech-centered or audience-centered? We use a little bit of both.